Namaskar. I am Dr. K.K. Agarwal, President Heart Care Foundation of India, and immediate past National President, Indian Medical Association. Welcome to our weekly webcast every Thursday at 3 p.m. And this time we have an international guest with us, and we are talking something different. Way back, I'm talking about 20 years back, my boss, Dr. K.L. Chopra, father of Dr. Deepak Chopra, he wrote an article, "Sugar is Slow Poison." At that time, we were only talking about cholesterol, X, we were talking about the red meat. But he introduced a subject that sugar is a slow poison. After that, we all started looking at that, because now we know that apart from salt, sugar is a #1 poison. And the dietary guidelines changed 2 years back. Both the AHA as well as in other countries, they have all started about sugar is a slow poison. In the last 2 decades, we have started reading the Vedic medicine and the Vedic concept, and we find the newborn baby for the next 2 years, or at least for the next 6 months, doesn't take any sugar, doesn't take any salt. That's one. And second thing is, we go back to the women in India, the traditional women in India. Remember, except for Raja Dashrath, there is no evidence of heart attack in Ramayana or Mahabharata. And Raja Dashrath probably had a heart attack because of his stress. May not be because of clogged arteries, we don't know. But in today's Raja Dashrath, which means all our ministers, many of them have clogged arteries, they have stenting, they have bypass, they are obese, they have, if not bypass, they are suffering from paralysis, they are suffering from hypertension, diabetes, pot belly obesity, and whatnot. So we started looking at the data that was in any way our traditional weekly fast was responsible for that. And when we looked at the data, we found that traditional weekly fast, that means once in a week, and then one extra fast a month, and that is when we talk about the Ekadashi fast, and then we go back to 4 times in a year, 9 days each, 4 Navratras, if not 4, minimum 2, that is the Chat Navratra and the Navratra linked to the Dashera. And so ultimately it comes out to be 80 days in a year. You have to take a specific diet. And when we started looking for that specific diet, there was no wheat there. That means traditionally Vedic medicine has been talking about that you have to be off wheat, that means off carbs, and for 80 days in a year, and you eat only roti and rice, that is samak chawal, that is you take roti of singhara and kuchu, which are fruits. So therefore, if you go back to a diet which is only fruits, 80 days in a year, you are not supposed to get heart disease, you are not supposed to get diabetes, you are not supposed to get other things. Then people started talking about Lord Krishna, the people started talking about Ganesha, that he had a pot belly obesity, Kubera had a pot belly obesity, but they never suffered from diabetes. Yes, there is a shlok available in literature about Ganesha, and the shlok basically talks about Ketfal, Jamun ka phal. Ketfal is an elephant apple type of an apple. Then whatever we do a arpit to Ganesha, that is either Bel Patra or whatever, they all have anti-insulin resistance activities. And if you go back to the traditional Ayurveda, it talks about neutralize every sugar with a bitter substance. And everything bitter which is there in Ayurveda basically talks about insulin resistance. So if I go back to that, so traditionally I talk about my ancient Vedic literature, and we have an expert who will talk about the same concept which is written in our ancient Vedic literature in scientific way. Yes, I'm talking about Pioppi diet expert who has written a bestseller in UK, and he is Dr. Aseem Malhotra. His father, Dr. Kailash Chand, who is the vice president of BMA, we interacted with him a couple of days back. And he did his MRCP in 2004, And so he shifted his profession from interventional cardiology to lifestyle intervention cardiology. And he has worked with the generations of people in Bernard Shaw's family, and his contemporary, his age contemporary, and he quotes that Bernard Shaw, if might have saved lakhs of people because of cardiac transplant, but he could have saved millions if he would have focused his life on lifestyle intervention cardiology. So let's interact with Aseem. What is this lifestyle interventions?
First of all, thank you for interviewing me today. It's a real honor to be here and to speak to you and your viewers. So I think we'll start with the fact that actually the decades-long campaign to eradicate the epidemic or global pandemic of heart disease through lowering cholesterol through either diet or drugs has failed. And the reason that's failed is that the hypothesis itself is fundamentally flawed. This whole focus that we have had for many years, everybody in cardiology, people, the public know, they have a fear of cholesterol, specifically LDL, so-called bad cholesterol. And I think before we go on, we need to accept one thing, that medicine itself is not an exact science, and it's a science that evolves with time. And one of the things you learn in medical school is that one of the fathers of evidence-based medicine, David Sackett, says 50% of what you learn in medical school will turn out either to be outdated or dead wrong within 5 years of your graduation. The trouble is, nobody can tell you which half, so you need to learn on your own. And the Pioppi diet really is based upon where a lot of this has gone wrong and why we have such a global problem now of type 2 diabetes, heart disease, obesity, high blood pressure, all sort of biggest killers in the Western world and even in the developing countries, such as India. And that's because we have focused purely on this lowering of cholesterol. This has been the #1 target. And when you look at all of the data, you mentioned it already very eloquently, insulin resistance is the #1 risk factor for heart disease. And in people under 60, LDL cholesterol comes much further down the bottom of the list as targets, really. And when you look at insulin resistance, you look at all the different things that are going to contribute to insulin resistance. So that's diet, which is high in processed refined carbohydrates and sugar specifically, that is going to make insulin resistance worse. Sedentary lifestyle, but something that can be combated very quickly, just easily by just walking briskly for 30 minutes, 5 days a week. Something that our grandparents would do. There were no gyms in Pioppi, but the average villager who lives to be almost 90 years old outlives the average Tour de France cyclist by almost 10 years, and there were no gyms. All they do is they're walking outside. Then you look at stress. We know stress is such a very big risk factor for many diseases, especially heart disease. Of course, it's difficult to measure, but we all know that it's very strongly correlated observationally, and that it does cause significant problems with heart disease and probably increase the risk of plaque rupture, which leads to heart attacks, and lack of sleep, lack of social interaction. All of these things combined all come together to basically give you what's going to impact upon heart disease, 80% of which, including smoking, is related to lifestyle. And therefore, we have that good enough science and data to tell us what the best solutions are. But that's really the biggest challenge we have, because we are up against really a lot of misleading messages. We have a multi-billion-dollar industry that benefits from a fear of cholesterol, either through giving people statin drugs or through following cholesterol-lowering diets. And yet the data tells us, when it comes to statins, unless you have heart disease, and of course I have, like you, prescribed statins to thousands of people in my career, unless you have established heart disease, you have a heart attack, taking a statin will not prolong your life by 1 day if you're low risk of heart disease. Yet most of the tens of millions of people taking statins worldwide are taking it for that very purpose, probably without the knowledge of the fact that it's not going to increase their lifespan. So all of these things together really have created this epidemic of misinformation and a real global pandemic of ill health. But we have the solutions now, and very simple lifestyle changes can be very powerful in affecting your health. One very clear example is type 2 diabetes. There are many people in India. It has the second highest prevalence of type 2 diabetes globally, in India and around the world. And we were taught in medical school, this is a chronic irreversible condition. Yet I am seeing patients who, within the space of weeks of being diagnosed, can even send their type 2 diabetes into remission or even a reversal, just by cutting out the sugar and the processed carbohydrate foods.
I just want to add, because in India, if I go back to the industrial participation, one thing came was cholesterol, 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 cholesterol. They all talked about cholesterol. And then came the cola industry. Then came the mithai, the sweet, which contains 30% sugar. And the chasni contains 50% sugar. And then the colas contains 12% sugar. So anything more than 10% is harmful, we know. But simultaneously, another thing came in India, which was equally bad. And that was that desi ghee is bad. The saturated fat is bad.
Yeah.
The traditional desi ghee went out of the shelf, and everybody started eating refined carbs. And with the refined carbs, they shifted to palm oil, refined palm, that
vegetable oils as well.
vegetable oils,
Sunflower.
and not sunflower. I'm talking about the hydrogenated fats.
Yes, okay.
I'm
yes,
talking
of
about
course.
the trans fats.
Yeah, yeah.
So I went to a place in Madhya Pradesh, and 100% people were using trans fats. Trans fat use became like a halwai. Every food was trans fat. If you call somebody at home to cook trans fat, all street food was trans fat. So there was a combination of two.
Wow.
Trans fat, which increases LDL, reduces HDL,
And it's pro-inflammatory.
and pro-inflammatory,
Yeah,
and with a sugar. So you had two diets which were pro-inflammatory.
absolutely.
So you had a sugary diet as a pro-inflammatory, and then you had a trans fat diet, and these two together became an epidemic of the country.
Yeah, no, absolutely, you're absolutely right. And I think I'm glad you raised the point about saturated fat. So I published an editorial last year in the British Journal of Sports Medicine that got a lot of publicity because I published it with two very internationally reputed cardiologists, both editors of medical journals, Professor Rita Redberg in California, editor of JAMA Internal Medicine, and Pascal Meyer, who's editor of Open Heart. And what we actually, looking at systematic reviews and the totality of the data, not cherry-picked data, totality of the data, for healthy people, looking at all of the observational studies, systematic reviews, no association whatsoever with saturated fat consumption and all-cause mortality, heart disease, stroke, type 2 diabetes, nothing. For people who had heart attacks, reducing saturated fat did not reduce any risk of further heart attacks or reduce mortality. And in fact, interestingly, the latest study in the Lancet, the PURE study, which is a very high-quality observational study, looking at tens of thousands of people across the globe, found that actually there is a correlation. Now I know correlation doesn't mean causation, but the highest consumption of saturated fat, around 13% of the calories from saturated fat, had a reduced incidence of stroke. So I'm not saying saturated fat is protective, but at the very least we can say it's definitely not harmful when it comes to heart disease. And of course, as you know, for cooking purposes, desi ghee, is very stable oil. Trans fats from those other hydrogenated vegetable oils are terrible for the health. Some of the other common oils that people have, these vegetable oils that are high in omega-6 fatty acids, such as sunflower oil, when they're heated to high temperatures in particular, they're not good for you, they're pro-inflammatory. So I actually myself will advise all my heart patients, 1, don't fear fat or saturated fat, 2, make sure you cut the sugar, and then other things that we know are beneficial are things like extra virgin olive oil, having a handful of nuts every day, like your badam, your almonds, walnuts, tree nuts, that kind of thing. Lots of vegetables clearly is important. And for people that do eat meat or fish, then oily fish, certainly from omega-3 fatty acids, does seem to be protective for heart disease.
So I'm going to now go back to more basics. What he ended up, we will restart that from there. Let's talk about, I try to identify and list maybe 10 or 15 steps to a healthy diet. So first of all, we have talked about is that when it comes to saturated ghee in India, we have desi ghee and we have butter. Your advice?
Absolutely fine. I wouldn't say that you should make that the base of all your diet, but if you want to have, I have regular ghee and butter. I actually put in my coffee every morning. Back home, I have a tablespoon of ghee or butter in my coffee with coconut oil because I know it's not damaging. Interestingly, saturated fat from coconut oil preferentially increases HDL significantly with very little, if any, effect on LDL. So the overall profile can improve. So butter, ghee, coconut oil.
So this coconut oil controversy became one of the, not controversy, the fact became one of the main AHA article last year.
Yeah, I think the AHA, I think they got it wrong because when you look at the data and the science, you have to reflect the science. It doesn't show, one we know saturated fat isn't correlated, but actually when you look at specific studies on the effects of coconut on blood cholesterol, it actually, if anything, improves your cholesterol profile because when we do risk calculators for heart disease, we look at total cholesterol divided by HDL. LDL is not in the risk calculator, and actually that tends to improve. But yeah, certainly I would say don't fear it. I wouldn't say it's the most important fat or oil you should be eating. I would say that what seems to be there from a lot of research, lots of studies, observational, even randomized controlled trial data, shows that having extra virgin olive oil, I would say 2 to 4 tablespoons a day, should actually be the base. If you can get good quality extra virgin olive oil, that is good for you. And it's anti-inflammatory. Its probably mechanism is stabilizing coronary plaques, and there's lots of other evidence suggesting it may even be protective against breast cancer, for example, and dementia.
So when I talk about olive oil, and in India, I also talk about the cost. Olive oil is costly.
Sure.
What about the groundnut oil? Which is cheaper,
yeah.
or soybean oil?
Yeah, I think anything that's high in the polyunsaturated fats, I'd be a bit careful because it does tend to become unstable with cooking. And also the omega-3 and omega-6 ratio in the bloodstream is also important, especially with heart disease. So I generally would avoid the soybean oil. Granite oil I think is generally okay because it's not a high polyunsaturated as far as I'm aware. So I think granite oil is not a problem. When it comes to extra virgin olive oil, you're right, the cost is an issue in India. But even if, certainly in England, in the UK, 2 to 4 tablespoons a day is very little cost. I mean, extremely low, probably something like 30 pennies. I think probably in India, for the masses, of course, it would be expensive, but certainly people who can afford it should be having extra virgin
What about mustard oil?
Mustard oil, I don't see a problem with. I don't think it's an issue.
So traditionally, if you see the first 2 points, one is that desi ghee is okay, the butter is okay, clarified butter, make butter at home, which is still better. And then when you want to shift to oil, we normally say go on changing the oil, and therefore don't use the same oil every time. But if you want to choose an oil, then choose the one with the monosaturated. And mono more than the poly. And the mono traditionally in India has been the mustard oil. Somehow some Calcutta people came forward and said that mustard oil causes complete heart block, but that's a myth that has never been proved. And that took away, people shifted from mustard oil to polyunsaturated oil, which is much more dangerous because we know that polyunsaturated oils, when they are repeatedly heated, become rancid, and they cause a reduction in antioxidants, and they cause a pro-inflammatory effect. So number one is desi ghee is fine, the butter is fine. Number two is when you want to shift to an oil, shift to an oil which has more of monosaturated oil, and of course, all three together, we normally say half kg per month. That should be your limit of fat in the body, your oil. That's 2. Number 3, let's come back to carbs. What are bad carbs? To be omitted.
Yeah, anything that's high glycemic index carbohydrates. So really your kind of white breads, too much pasta, too much rice. These are the things as well, especially when you combine it with sugar. I mean, anything, sugary drinks, fruit juice is not good at all. I mean, no parent should be giving their kids fruit juice, I'll be very honest with you, because it's the equivalent of giving them cola, full sugared cola, because the metabolic effect on the body is very similar. Of course, there are some vitamins in juice, but you can get that from the rest of the food, and eat the whole fruit, not the juice, because the whole fruit has fiber. And fiber slows the absorption of sugar into the bloodstream and causes less of an insulin spike, an insulin surge. And remember, insulin resistance is the problem we're dealing with here. So when we talk about the refined carbs, so these are the ones that lack fiber, which is your bread, your pasta, your rice, that kind of thing. Now, of course, in Indian diet, that is quite a common, this is staple part of the diet. But it's the quantity, the dose determines also the poison. So I think the quantity certainly needs to be very much controlled. Some people can reduce it to 0, especially if you have type 2 diabetes, and replace it with more vegetables, or if you're a meat eater, you can eat more meat.
So if you want to reverse your diabetes, specifically the lifestyle diabetes, when I say lifestyle diabetes means diabetes which has a predominant insulin resistance, which according to Aseem, you can reverse it in the first 3 weeks by following the Pioppi diet. Now, when I talk about the formula of cha is chini chawal chapati, chapati maide ki. So maide ki chapati, chini chawal maida, or cha for chapati maide ki. So chini, yes, chini is harmful if you want to shift. Now if I go back to 4 generations, from ganna, from sugarcane, you have gur, from gur to khand, which is your shakkar, and from there to chini. So it's a 4th generation. Anything which is 1st and 2nd generation still may be okay. In any food, look for the generation. If it is 4th generation, it is the most dangerous. It becomes like a poisonous. So therefore, if you want to have, go back to gur, which is the 2nd generation, but no chini, no sugar. You need to take it out off completely from the diet. That's one. Number two, bad carbohydrate comes is when it comes to wheat flour, choker wala atta, sabse pehle gehu, then choker wala atta, then atta without choker, and then suji, and then maida. Maida becomes a fifth generation, as bad as, but there will be a little bit of maida everywhere. Remember, if you take even your ready-made wheat flour from the market, it will have 7% maida. So no wheat can be stored or preserved without adding maida into it. And how do you remember in a public library? Take atta and make it a piece and throw it on the wall. It will fall down. It will fall down. But if you add maida into it, it will stick. So the maida sticks. That's the way you can educate the people that if maida sticks on the wall, it will stick in the wall inside your body also. And that's the way we call them. So therefore, no maida as much as possible. Maida means bread, maida means chawal, maida means pasta. So therefore, all those diet, wherever there is a maida, even if it is only 7%, say no to maida. That's the second thing in carbohydrates. And then third thing, even including your all fast diet, including all your, see, remember one thing is, what Aseem has said is very clearly that fast food is good for health. Junk food is bad. Fast food, he said, nuts are fast food, milk is fast food, dahi is fast food. Take dahi and eat, take vegetables and eat, cut fruits and eat, that's a fast food. But the junk fast food, which is containing your carbohydrate, bad carbohydrate and a bad fat, that means when I say bad fat means trans fat,
Yeah, sure.
and a bad carb means basically refined carbs, are harmful for the health.
Absolutely.
So this the third thing is low in carb, that's your diet, and observing weekly fast also the same thing.
Yeah.
Because on the day of your fast, you are only on a fruit diet.
Yeah.
Falahar.
In fact, in the Pioppi diet, we do recommend. So in the traditional Italian village Pioppi, they obviously food was expensive. They were living in times where there was a scarcity of certain types of food that are very expensive, and they would actually inadvertently end up fasting, not realizing actually fasting itself is actually very good for insulin resistance. So we do say that you can fast for 1 day a week, which basically means you don't go to bed hungry, but you don't eat for a 24-hour period from your last meal. So you eat in the evening, and then in the morning you can drink water and have teas and coffees, that kind of thing, and then you don't eat again till the following evening. So certainly there does seem to be some good evidence that fasting is a very powerful lifestyle interventional tool for your health, especially for people with type 2 diabetes.
And that tells me the yogic saying, जो दिन में एक बार खाता है वो योगी, जो 2 बार खाता है वो भोगी, और जो 3 बार खाता है वो रोगी. That means eat less, and that's probably works on the question of insulin resistance on that. What about salt?
So it's interesting, the salt issue, I've not studied in a lot of detail, but I have a lot of friends and experts, people who look at the salt issue, and there's a bit of a debate going on at the moment. Certainly there is a school of thought, and there is evidence to suggest that there's probably about 10% of the population is salt sensitive, and those people in particular are more vulnerable to getting salt, but that tends to be people once they develop hypertension, they should cut the salt, and it will be better. For everybody else, it isn't a major issue, and in fact, I think what we forget is a lot of the increase in salt consumption really is coming from processed foods, which are also high in sugar. So, there is a cardiovascular research scientist in America called James DiNicolantonio, and what he has said, and I think it makes a lot of sense, that a lot of the foods that we thought increased blood pressure because of salt were actually increasing blood pressure because of sugar. And there is data showing that sugar consumption increases blood pressure, probably through the insulin resistance mechanism. So I am not particularly worried about salt, I'll be honest with you. If you have high blood pressure, certainly think about curtailing it. On the other side, we know the extreme end, low salt consumption increases mortality. So there's probably a bit in the middle that we should have some salt, but clearly not, you don't need to be gorging on lots and lots of salt.
So when it comes to salt, now it reminds me of the Ayurvedic concept. In Ayurveda, we have 3 different types of group, that is Vata, Pitta and Kapha. And in our language, in modern medicine language, they are movement, metabolism and structure. The movement, the Vata people basically they are more sensitive to astringent, pungent and bitter diet. The one which are Pitta and Kapha, Pitta is PSS, pungent, sour and salt. And the one who has Kapha are sweet, sour and salt. And in India, most of the people are, less number of people are Kapha people, Therefore, salt-resistant people in Indian population you will find the least. Most of the time, you will find a you will not find salt-sensitive people. You will find more of a salt-resistant people. And if you are not salt-sensitive, you may not restricting salt may not help. And that's the reason restricting salt. Most of us are sugar-sensitive and not salt-sensitive. That's what when it comes to salt. When it comes to dry fruits, what's the latest recommendation? When you say handful means what?
Well, so a handful of nuts. So the PREDIMED study in New England Journal of Medicine published 2013, randomized control trial. So they looked at several thousand people at high risk of heart disease, middle-aged people, 57% women, which is interestingly, a lot of trials don't have such a high preponderance of women, which is a good thing about this trial. And what they found was either having 4 tablespoons of extra virgin olive oil a day at least, or a handful of nuts. Specifically, there were tree nuts, so walnuts, almonds or badam, and hazelnuts. And in those people, over a period of 4.8 years, there was significant reduction in cardiovascular events, specifically driven by stroke reduction. Relative risk, about 30% reduction. Numbers needed to treat, 1 in 61. But the handful of nuts certainly seemed to be very beneficial there. And that's probably because of omega-3, the fiber, anti-inflammatory compounds in the nuts. So nuts, absolutely, I would say when it comes to heart health, they're a health food.
What about mungfali? That's the cheapest in India.
Well, to be honest, I don't think there's any specific data on it. I don't think there's any particular harm. But I don't think there's any data on that specific nut and benefit. But I'm sure it's not a problem. I'm sure it's good. Nuts in general, all nuts generally are good.
So all nuts in general are good. So let's revise that desi ghee, that is desi ghee you can have, vanaspati no trans fat. Sugar in terms of that, complex carbohydrates, yes, to some extent. Make your diet to zero wheat as much as possible. You have bajra, jowar, ragi, kutu ka atta, you have samak chawal as a fruits, you can have kutu, you have so many other alternatives. You have makka, you have besan, all of them are low glycemic index. So therefore, say no to wheat as much as possible. If you can't, at least once in a week, don't take wheat at all, do only a falahar. And then salt, unless you are a salt sensitive, no need of restricting it. Take a handful of nuts every day. Olive oil, yes. Try if you can afford, shift to olive oil. Otherwise groundnut oil or a sarson ka tel, they are equally good. Even til ka tel is supposed to be a high in monosaturated oils. So coming back to the diet, let's come back to other factors, and that's diabetes and stress reduction. What about, and we come back to the second one is exercise.
Yeah, sure. So I think what many people have misinterpreted also the benefits of exercise, and some people feel, understandably, that it's a real challenge and it's difficult. The reality is actually very simple exercise, which doesn't necessarily need joining a gym. When it comes to heart disease, the evidence seems to be very clear. We point out in the editorial as well that actually just doing 30 minutes of exercise 5 times a week, moderate exercise such as walking, getting a little bit out of breath, walking briskly for 30 minutes, 5 times a week, is actually probably the most powerful intervention you can do when it comes to heart health and preventing coronary disease. It may even be more beneficial than running. And we know, and I've been a runner, most of my life I've been a runner, and it's already started to affect my knees. And actually, if you don't run right or you're running on a flat, it can be very bad on the joints. Walking doesn't tend to give you that problem. So there's an extra stress that can happen if you don't exercise properly. So walking everybody can do, really. So I think that would be the most powerful thing people can do for their health when it comes to heart disease prevention.
I recall talking about 1983, a news item came that walking increased your sexual performance. And next day, we got a news that everybody in America is walking early in the morning, specifically the 60-plus people. And a week later, the phenomena came that so many people died on the road because they were doing unaccustomed exercise. And then there came a debate that when you are for the first time in your life starting your walking, what to do, and here comes what we use in India, is a 6-minute walk test. So when you want to start your walking phenomena, if you're elderly, start with 6 minutes, measure your distance. If your distance is more than 500 meters, you are fine. You are fit to walk. You don't need any cardiology clearance, and start walking the way Aseem is talking. But if you walk less than 200 meters in 6 minutes, go to your doctor and take a fitness certificate. Can I walk? if I walk, what should be my schedule, because 200 meters is nothing. That means you are suffering from, you are not cardiac or pulmonary fit. And if it is between 200 to 500, go slow. Slowly you build up your stamina. And then there came 10,000 steps, that you start with 1,000, 2,000, 3,000. Everybody should walk 10,000 steps. I normally say start with 6 minutes, and in 6 minutes, if you can walk more than 500 meters, then slowly build it up and walk 30 minutes a day for 5 days a week. No need of jogging, no need of running fast. Even if you simple walk 30 minutes a day, it reduces enough insulin resistance. And how do you come to know that your insulin resistance is reducing?
Well, there are different markers, direct and indirect markers. So when we talk about insulin resistance, we're actually referring to synonymous with metabolic syndrome. So metabolic syndrome is any three of the five of high blood pressure, impaired glucose tolerance, pre-diabetes or type 2 diabetes, depending on the definition, increased triglycerides in the bloodstream, low HDL cholesterol, and increased waist circumference. If you have any three of those five, you have metabolic syndrome. So actually what happens when you do this, walking with all the other things, is that those markers will tend to improve to different degrees in different people, and that's the best way of measuring it. So metabolic syndrome would be the thing.
So in metabolic syndrome, if out of the five, if I have to measure one, and that's abdominal circumference, and that's the formula of 80, 90, 18 women and 19 men. And that may be the first parameter if you have an inch tape, measuring tape, and if you start measuring your abdominal circumference, you may find that the first thing to change in a low-carb diet is change in your abdominal circumference. And here comes a formula which I have created, a formula of 80, that keep your diastolic blood pressure, LDL cholesterol, fasting sugar, abdominal circumference, and heart rate, all below 80.
Oh, right, okay. Very good, yeah.
For that, walk 80 minutes a day, brisk walk 80 minutes a week. Brisk walk means minimum 80 steps in a minute.
Right.
Okay?
Yeah.
Do not eat heavy food, not more than 80 grams of caloric food or 80 ml of caloric liquid at a time.
Right.
Okay? Observe carb fast 80 days a year. Do not eat carbohydrates 80 days in a year, specifically chini, chawal and maida. Do 80 cycles of parasympathetic breathing, slower and deeper breathing for a mindfulness breathing.
Yeah.
Same as what you're talking about mindfulness meditation. You do that. Sit 80 days in a year in sunlight to get vitamin D. Okay. Prevent your noise pollution to less than 80, and air pollution 2.5 and PM10 to less than 80. Keep your pollution levels to less than 80. So everything is coming 80, 80, 80, 80, 80. And then your chances of heart attack will reduce by 80%. And even if you get heart attack, you still have two more choices, 80 milligram of aspirin or 80 milligram of statin. It will not lead to any death. Even if you die, there are 80% chances by remembering the formula of 10. That is, if you are 10 within 10 minutes of death, at least for the next 10 minutes, compress the center of the chest effectively and continuously with a speed of 10 into 10, that is 100 per minute. You will be able to save the person. So everything is 80.
It's a great formula.
That's the way
Fantastic formula.
we talk about to the people. So that there also comes 80 days in a year fast. Fast means falah. We call it as a falah. On that day only take falah. Another thing which Aseem has specifically talked about is fruit juices. Now fruit juices, they say big no to fruit juice. You never see any animal, they all eat raw fruit, they don't take fruit juices, and that's the reason only a lion in the zoo gets a heart attack, or a dog or a rabbit in the laboratory gets a heart attack, but not in the jungle, because they eat and they live in accordance with the laws of nature. Now what is happening is, sugar in India traditionally is a diet for the sick. When you cannot absorb the fiber, then you say, okay, you are having a typhoid, take juices. But juices are not for the healthy people, because you are taking away the diet, the fiber. But the most important is that you are not even eating sugar. You are not eating juice, you are adding sugar into it. Because most of the sugary preserved food in the market is with added sugars.
Yeah, that's very true. So, I know it's similar in India, in the UK, in America. More than 70% of foods you find now in the supermarket have added sugar. And that's a problem, because the food industry, it's cheap, it sells, it tastes good. And the other interesting thing about sugar as well, which is not discussed enough, is actually there is good data to suggest biochemically it actually interferes with hormones that control appetite. So in a way, people should see the added sugar, even artificial sweeteners, as almost like an appetite stimulant. And once you remove that from the diet, and some people I'm sure watching this say, well, I eat so much sugar, how am I going to do this? I used to be a sugar addict myself. I had easily, when you combine all added foods and juices, etc., and cakes and all that kind of thing, I got through cereal in the morning, I got through about 40 teaspoons of sugar a day. But then when I went cold turkey and cut it out completely, within a few weeks the cravings disappeared. And now I have it as an occasional treat. Now ideally, yes, you're absolutely right. There's no room for added sugar as part of a healthy balanced diet. It should be a treat. How often should you have it? Well, it's interesting, in Pioppi, in this village, we asked them, how often do you eat dessert? People think Italians having dessert all the time, every evening meal. No. Dessert only on Sundays, once a week. If the whole of the Indian population had their mithai just once a week on a Sunday, they would reverse type 2 diabetes within India very, very quickly.
So that's what our Dadi Ma used to say, कि रूखी सूखी खानी है तो कभी भी मेरे घर पे आ, लेकिन तेरे को अगर 52 प्रकार के व्यंजन खाने हैं तो छुट्टी के दिन दोपहर में मेरे पास आइयो, दोपहर में, not in the evening. So you can enjoy a afternoon once in a week meal, whatever you want to eat. कहते हैं कि मैं मंदिर में जाके पूजा पाठ भी कर लेता हूँ, मैं साधुओं से कभी कभी आलाप भी कर लेता हूँ, मंदिर में जाके पूजा पाठ भी कर लेता हूँ, यही सोचकर कि आदमी से खुदा ना बन जाऊँ, मैं संडे में एक दिन शुगर भी खा लेता हूँ.
That's very interesting. I didn't know that. Yeah, that's very
That's what traditionally that मैं कभी कभी पाप भी कर लेता हूँ, and पाप here is eating sugar, and once in a week it is allowed with that. Now let's go quick, the time is less, let's talk about eggs.
Yeah, so for a long time people have feared cholesterol in food, thinking it raises blood cholesterol. 2015, revised guidelines by the American Guidelines Committee, they realized that cholesterol is no longer a nutrient of concern because it doesn't raise blood cholesterol. So actually people should not be avoiding the yolk. Yolk can be one of the most nutritious parts of the egg. So actually when you eat eggs, and I actually recommend people eating lots of eggs actually, because it's a very, it's a food that has so much nutrition and protein, 9 essential amino acids are found in eggs. So I would say that egg is one of the best foods you can eat. Have it with the yolk, and it's also very filling. So instead of sugar cereal in the morning, the best thing you can do in the morning is have 2 or 3 eggs for breakfast.
So if you are a egg eater, continue it. What about non-veg, white versus red meat?
Yeah, so the red meat issue has also been tied into saturated fat. Now, the best meats, if you can call it meat, oily fish ideally. But when it comes to other sorts of meats, no major issue. I wouldn't say eat lots and lots of red meat. If there is a problem with red meat, it's nothing to do with the saturated fat content. It may be that it affects adversely the gut microbiome, the bacteria in the gut. There's a lot of research now emerging about how different bacteria in the gut can affect chronic inflammation and disease. So I would say that I wouldn't be overly, if you do the other things right that we're talking about, removing the refined carbohydrates, having the other kinds of healthy fats, I wouldn't say that you should necessarily put a limit on it, but maybe 2 or 3 times a week. I certainly tell my heart patients, not to fear having decent, because red meat also, for example, lamb, in India people eat lamb here, is actually a very nutritious food.
So when it comes to microbiome, there are bacteria which are in our body. And somebody asked me that what is the first marker of obesity? Look at the microbiome, they will become fattier first. The time they become fattier because they like refined carbs. So the main diet which you are eating, refined carb, is not for you, but for your microbiome. You are making them from healthy to unhealthy microbiome, which is in Ayurveda called as a Jathar Agni, and that Agni is responsible for pot belly obesity. So therefore, to reduction of obesity nowadays, people are talking about take probiotics, and that's the reason traditionally has been given as an anti-obesity diet, anti-heart disease diet. That's the reason, that's the concept of microbiome is concerned. What about smoking?
Yeah, smoking, so I'm really glad you raised that. Some people watching who are pretty clued up will say, well, hold on a minute, heart disease has declined in the Western world significantly in the last few decades. Cardiovascular death rates have dramatically declined. More than half of that can be attributed to reduction in smoking. So really, smoking is a big no-no, but the good news is if you're a smoker, if you quit smoking, within 5 years, your risk of heart attack becomes similar to a non-smoker. So it's never too late, and smoking itself, even 30 minutes of passive smoking, you mentioned this in the book, increases platelet activity and essentially makes the blood more clottable. So passive smoking and smoking itself is a very bad thing to do, but the good news is the sooner you quit, the better. You can rapidly reduce your risk.
Traditionally, Indians have been smoking. If you go back to Ayurveda, there has been a herbal smoking. We have havan every house, we have smoking, but there was never a tobacco. So tobacco came as an adulteration in our smoking patterns. And now in India, they are doing about is a fruit smoking. What they do is they will take a fruit and they will smash it, put it into water, and use that as a smoking is now a part of inhalation of steam, which is with fruits, and that's how they are trying to replace, which I feel is better than consuming tobacco with that. Now, what about pollution? In India, we have been seeing, say, in the city where you are at this moment, the pollution levels are more than 300, PM10 and PM2.5, and we know PM2.5 is inflammatory. It gets absorbed in the blood, causes inflammation, and PM2.5 is responsible for high CRP. So PM2.5, insulin resistance together is causing catastrophe.
Yeah.
So any advice for that?
Yeah, well, I think really this is another, this is an example. I mean, it's a clear big problem in India, especially in Delhi, where government needs to get involved. And in fact, you know, sometimes governments can ignore the health issues because, you know, they're focusing so much on the economy and trying to boost the economy, and that's understandable. But it's been estimated that premature death, there's people dying under the age of 65 in India from heart attack and stroke, which is linked to all these factors we've discussed, will cost the Indian economy the equivalent of $3 trillion by 2030 unless action is taken. So I think the message to politicians out there is an unhealthy population is an economically unproductive one too.
But even then, we need to find out a lifestyle answer because there are 3 peaks of pollution in Delhi. One is in October, that is post-Diwali, and which is because of increased particulate matter. In Delhi, it is the particulate matter which is causing the pollution levels. And then in this time, that is January, when you have again a particulate matter which is very, very, very high. And that is also because of the wind movements are slower. So therefore, particulate matter tends to be on the lower side. And then comes in the summer season. Then at that time particularly, the particulate matter is again because of the winds. With that. So we have 3 peaks of pollution levels in Delhi. Government has not been able to do anything. We have seen the recent cricket match between India and Sri Lanka put into a controversy. We have marathon running with a PM10 of more than 300, which is injurious to the health of the people. So even when we are talking about our lifestyle will be incomplete because the message should not go is that pollution is okay as long as you take carbohydrate, zero carbohydrate diet or other thing. But even then, so my only thing I want to add is that for those people who can afford, okay, and if the PM levels are more than 300, PM10 or 2.5, use a air purifier in your room and exercise in the room on a treadmill or on a cycle or something. Because there is an air purifier where your PM level, PM2.5 and PM10 levels are less than 100.
Right. Sure.
Otherwise, in the open, when you are inhaling, when you are exercising in the open with the PM10 levels of 300, whatever benefit you got of the exercise will go away because you are hyperactively inhaling the PM2.5. If you inhale and if you are exercising, your output may be more than 20 times than what you are at the rest. So all the beneficial effects may go away.
Yeah.
So with that, in India, specifically in Delhi, because in Bangalore, the pollution levels are less than 50 today. In Delhi, it is 300.
Wow.
So at least if you are exercising, make sure that your pollution levels are also taken into consideration.
Of course. No, I completely agree with you. And I don't have as much expertise, obviously, as you on living in Delhi about the pollution, but clearly it's a big risk factor. And yes, exercising in this sort of weather when the pollution is very high is very damaging to your health.
So what we have learned today is that if you really want to live a healthy life in Delhi, I'm specifically talking about in India and specifically in Delhi, because Delhi is an example of the most polluted city, and that's a new risk factor which has been added. Exercise, but when you are exercising, make sure that you are in a pollution-free atmosphere as far as possible with that. reduce your pollution, and number two is that you make sure that you go back to a carb-off diet at least once in a week, 80 days in a year, whether you want to go back to your Islam Roza, or you want to go to the Easter 40 days, or you want to go to the Sikhism, or you want to follow the Navratras of a traditional Hindu Navratra. Try to make your diet off as much as possible, or if not, if you are not a religious man, you don't want to believe in a weekly fast, make only one diet with your carb. Rest all the diets can be a fruits diet. That means out of 3 diets, you can take carb once in a day. And so low carb diet, fat is okay, fish is okay, non-veg is okay, eggs are okay. Salt is okay unless you are salt sensitive, and specifically if you don't have high blood pressure, don't bother about the salt. You basically bother about the carbs. No orange juices, no fruit juices at all. If you want to eat them raw, and don't eat them in abundance. Remember that when you take a fruit juice, you are taking 4 to 6 oranges. When you eat orange, you probably will eat 1 orange with the fiber in it. So concentrate on the fiber, lots of nuts, desi ghee is okay, butter is okay, and if you want to eat an oil, choose an oil with more mono. For everybody sarson ka tel, for everybody mungfali ka tel, and if you can afford an olive oil, why not 3 to 4 spoonful of olive oil? If you don't want to take olive oil, yes, you can take 30 grams of mungfali or 30 grams of badam, kishmish, akhroot, whatever you want to have. If you take a dry fruits, it helps in your body. And if you want to increase your HDL, again exercise, red chilies, olive oil, they all, and then your coconut oil. Coconut oil specifically increases the HDL content. And forget about measuring your fasting cholesterol profile. Any time of the day, non-fasting is fine. Look for the non-HDL, because HDL is the culprit. Don't forget about the LDL. It is the non-HDL. It is the non-HDL cholesterol which you are talking about. Is how much is the non-HDL, and try to bring it to around 100. Try to achieve it to around 100. And of course, no smoking, no bidi, no tobacco of any type. So walk at least 80 minutes a week. He says 30 minutes in 5 days a week, that is 150 minutes. And even if you do it, half of that 80 minutes is fine, but that 150 is an ideal. And before walking, do a 6-minute walk test. So that if you don't walk more than 200 meters, go back to your doctor and say, am I fit to exercise? What should be my exercise protocol? Simple thing, anybody can do a 6-minute walk test. And if the 6-minute walk test is less than 200 meters, you need investigations. Anything else you want to add?
No, I think the other thing is just think about your sleep and your stress levels. I think meditation is a very powerful tool. Deep breathing, for example, we give some examples in Pioppi diet to maybe for at least 2 minutes, 4 times a day, just breathing in and out for 5 seconds in a quiet room. Think about your stress levels. People know if they're stressed. And also that is very much tied into getting good sleep. So try and get at least 7 hours sleep a night. We know on average people who get less than 7 hours have increased risks of all sorts of diseases, including heart disease, depression, obesity.
So stress is the reaction of the body and the mind to the interpretation of a known situation. Try to follow, reduce your stress, do parasympathetic breathing, parasympathetic relaxation. Whatever you do, shift from chronic sympathetic state to a chronic parasympathetic state. That takes away your stress levels, that takes away your natural inflammatory systems in the body. And apart from stress, anything else with that?
No, I think that's it really. I mean, social interaction. A lot of people these days are spending a lot of time on social media. I know we're benefiting from this through our talk, but a lot of people are spending time on social media. And I think that, we advise, for example, switch off from computer screens and social media at least 2 hours before going to sleep. Don't have any caffeine after lunchtime. All these stimulants can sometimes, people have a poor sleep and it's a vicious cycle, then they're more stressed, then they have a more poor sleep. So really try and think about how much good sleep, quality sleep you're getting. You'll feel more energized and happier during the day. And the only other thing to say is that, if people want to get the book, it's available in India, Pioppi Diet, through Amazon, and it's doing, reasonably well over here as well. So,
and that's what we talk about, a joint family concept in India, and more nuclear families are coming. You have nobody to interact, and specifically if you are a widow or a widower, you end up into a problem. So let me end the program, but before I end, where is your book available?
So you can get it on Amazon. If you just put Pioppi on Amazon, in India it's available everywhere. People can get it in the bookstores. I know several months ago, when it first came out, a friend of mine, a film director, Gurinder Chadha, was in Delhi airport and sent me a photograph showing that it was actually ranked number 12 at that stage. Although it's been a few months, but it's available on Amazon, so people can order it online.
And what about your multi-language? In India, is there a Hindi version available?
Sadly, at the moment, no, it's just in English. But I'm hoping at some point we will get it translated into Hindi as well.
And who is your publisher?
It's Penguin Random House.
Penguin do come out with Hindi versions.
Yeah, I will convince them to do a Hindi version.
Because if it is a Hindi version, more and more people will be...
Yes, of course. No, absolutely. And we may actually, I myself also am a very avid cook, and I cook a lot of Indian food. So I think maybe an Indian version of the Pioppi diet would be a good idea, where we can put lots of Indian recipes as well in there.
Okay. Let's end the whole program, and if you, of course, I don't have to say if you like this video. I know you have liked this video, but don't forget to forward it. Like it, forward it to other people. Make it viral as much as possible. And if you are an Indian, if you follow these concepts, your diabetes will reduce. Within 3 weeks, your diabetes, at least 50% it should go. You can get rid of the lifestyle insulin dependence, that means insulin dependence which is coming because of insulin resistance, that may go away. But the first marker will be a pot belly obesity. You may find the day you say, "Meri pant ka size kam ho raha hai," this diet is working. That's the earliest marker for that. Your weight will reduce, and normally people say that I have to go to bariatric surgery. I normally say that before you go to a bariatric surgery, try a low-carb diet. And I'm going to end with a simple example. A lady with 140 kg came to me sometimes back, and she was saying that I've been posted for surgery for after 2 weeks, so I've not been able to manage at home. So for 2 weeks, keep him in the hospital. And she was put on a zero-carb diet, and she walked home without surgery.
Wow.
She lost almost like 40 pounds.
Amazing.
Rare case, does happen, and India, there are a lot of people who are carb sensitive, lot of people. And if you go back to our Vedic literature, they call a disease in Vedas, and that is called Anna Dosh. It's not celiac disease. When they talk about Anna Dosh, they do talk about that Anna Dosh is basically a carbohydrate sensitivity, which leads you to a disease. And in India, we know that women are more prone to get carb sensitivity and obesity, more women in India, and therefore traditionally it came then women has to fast more than the men. It became like a ritual that every woman in India has to fast once in a week because they are more prone to get insulin resistance compared to the men.
I never knew that.
Because the men fast, men walk, men do exercise, men do that. So therefore this became like a traditional. आप हफ्ते में फास्ट नहीं करते हम तेरे से शादी नहीं करेंगे. So it came out traditionally that every woman has to do an Ekadashi fast. They have to follow the Navaratras. Men are also doing, but women are like a ritual. It's like it is considered bad woman if the woman is not doing a Navaratras. Probably because they were supposed to do two apart from that, Santoshi Maka Vrat, which is iron and good, which is good iron and protein, chana and good. Good is iron. So menstruating women has to do that and this. So that's all what we have talked about. Let's thank Aseem to be here with us.
It's a real pleasure.
And whenever he's in India, now he will be tempted to come back here on Thursday, and he'll make sure that he is interacting with us on another show. Good luck to your book.
Thank you.
And I hope this becomes a bestseller in India also, if it is not already.
That's very kind.
And we will come back with him some other day, another show on that. But his show is incomplete unless you follow what Aseem has said. And if I get a message in the next 1 month that so many people have got benefited because of this, it will be I will be the most satisfied man for interviewing Aseem. Thank you very much for being with us. We will come back next week with another show. Thank you.